You're listening to the Seahawks Insiders.
Geno looks, going to lay it up over the top. Got a man out there. It is Lockett. He has got it. Touchdown, Seahawks.
Getting you ready for Seahawks football every Sunday.
Hurts drops back, has time, loads up, throws. A.J. Brown, the defense. It's intercepted. Does he keep his feet in? He does. Seahawks ball.
Presented by Delta, the official airline of the Seahawks. Now, here's your host, Jen Mueller.
What an opening week for the Seahawks. Maybe a little bit more drama than we might have liked, John Boyle, but everything ends well when there is a W involved. And you can just take week one as maybe just a learning lesson, right? We are not among the people that get paid to overreact after one game. There's a lot of people who get paid to overreact. We are not one of them. We are looking for trends, facts, and what we saw last week against the Seahawks.
Speak for yourself. I'm overreacting. I'm getting nuts.
We're getting crazy today?
No.
I can find things to overreact about. That's not generally.
No, that's not what we do.
No, let's not do that.
We could change it up one of these days, but not today.
Yeah, what did we take away from that game on Sunday?
I mean, to me, obviously, we took away the defense, played really hard, really fast. You know, I know the opponents are going to get tougher at some point, but just very encouraging first signs from the defense. That's, to me, the biggest thing.
I would say for me, the importance of the run game, the ability to bounce back. And last week I said I wanted to see how many people on offense were going to get involved. 9 different players got involved, which to me, and outside of Ken Walker and Tyler Lockett with some big plays, it's not that everybody was filling up the stat sheet. It's that it was diverse in some of the play calling and how people were involved in the game.
Yeah. I mean, you saw like their touchdown to Zach Charbonnet. It was one catch of the game, or 2 catches, but still, like, guy not doing a lot, but when he got his chance, he took advantage, and they got a lot of weapons.
Now, I am not going to say that my face was very neutral for the first few plays that the offense was on the field.
Not the best start.
I try not to show a lot of reaction. I might have shown a little bit more reaction than I intended to. I think the biggest thing we learned about this team was how they would react under pressure, and it was pretty evident from the players and the coaches.
Nobody was getting flustered on the sideline when after the pick or after the 2 safeties. The defense just said, all right, we know what we got to do, and then they went out there and got a stop.
Yeah, we heard that from DK, and also we heard after the game, multiple people pointed to Geno Smith being the guy that kind of got everyone together, calmed them down. I talked to Laken Tomlinson in the locker room on Wednesday, and he talked about that. Like, look, some teams don't respond to that kind of start, and it can spiral on you. And then, the offense can start pointing fingers, and guys get mad and all that. And they just stuck together, fought through it. It was a pretty lousy start all around for that offense, but they bounced back well.
Well, and for this group, with a brand new coaching staff, and that was among one of the things to figure out. And I heard it on both sides. The coaches wanted to see how the players were going to respond, and the players wanted to see how their coaches were going to respond. And there was a couple of guys who talked about that after the game in the locker room that was like, yeah, nobody panicked. And I will tell you, Geno, when he brought the entire team together, it wasn't a yelling at.
Yeah.
It was the reminder of this is who we are. He got a lot of agreement. There was a lot of guys that were nodding their heads. It wasn't a tenor of frustration or this thing is, getting out of control in a hurry. I think that might be the biggest thing that we learned in week one and the thing that will serve this team the best.
Yeah, no, I mean, you didn't want to start the game that way, but I think in the long run that can actually be a good thing for this team of like, hey, we faced some mostly self-inflicted adversity early on and fought through it and came out on the better side of it in the second half.
Yeah, and I think you really did see kind of the full team effort on that one.
Yeah.
Here's what else we saw for the first time. We saw the players' off-day change.
Yeah.
And I thought it was fascinating to listen to Mike McDonald talk about how he reviews tape and when he reviews film of the game.
Yeah.
Because the only thing I have ever seen from every coach I've ever covered is you get on the plane and everybody's downloaded and they're starting to go through tape.
Yeah, you walk around that plane after a game and all the coaches just
Yeah.
into the film. And some might still like that, but that's not what Mike likes.
Well, and so if you miss that, it's Mike McDonald wants the emotion of the game to go away. So on game days, he just kind of goes home, he regroups, and then it's the next day that he goes and looks at the film. And for the players, the off day. So there is one mandated off day. This is across the whole entire NFL for players. Typically, that day is Tuesday. At least it has been that way for a really long time here with the Seahawks. The players' off day is now Monday, and they will come in on Tuesday and start their work week. And again, this kind of goes back to Mike McDonald's philosophy, is taking just a little bit of the emotion out of it.
I'd say the main thing is to really just be able to take a deep breath after the game and then be able to move on. That's the main thing. Take the emotion out of it, be able to kind of digest, understand why you won or lost, where you need to improve. The guys get it the next day, and then you're once they come in, you're kind of in next week's mode. There's no like break. It's, hey, this is what happened. Let's move on. Okay, now it's like an extended week on that next opponent.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea of you're already on to the next week by Tuesday, as opposed to in the past you sort of had, if you take the Tuesday off, which a lot of teams around the league do, you sort of Monday's sort of like, hey, we're looking back at the previous game, and then Wednesday's when that shift happens. So the way Mike sees like, yeah, we're kind of getting a little head start on the week. I'll be curious to hear how players feel later on, because this does eliminate sort of the idea of like sometimes coaches like to surprise players with, oh, take Monday off, and it turns into 2 days off after a win. Now, I don't think they get that extra victory day off now. We'll see.
I don't know. Mike has surprised them a few times
has.
and canceled meetings and canceled practices.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that
Maybe
he will
there'll
find
be a
a
Tuesday
way.
off one of these days.
I'm sure that he will find a way to reward them. And that defense, I mean, look, I'm not going to hand out stars too early in the season, but they definitely deserve some credit and a reward. How about 13 first downs allowed by that defense? That is the fewest in a game since 2020. And 10 of Denver's 15 offensive possessions ended in either a 3-and-out or a turnover. Now, I think some of that is a rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
I think some of that is you started to see what this defense can do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, it's going to get harder as the season goes along. You're going to face some more experienced quarterbacks, some more dynamic offenses. But, I mean, just what does translate, regardless of the opponent, is how guys tackled, how they were just swarming to the ball every time. Denver, they were checking the ball down a lot, and that strategy can work really well if you can make a guy miss or two. But they just weren't able to break tackles, and with that, it was just short gain, tackle for loss, and it was really exciting to see a defense play like that.
This week, you were going to see two defensive-minded head coaches. You were going to see two very young coaches. You were going to see two defensive-minded teams, because the New England Patriots are coming off a surprising win against Cincinnati, and they too only allowed 13 first downs. They allowed 70 rushing yards. And here's the big picture question that I wrote down for you, John. Because we heard the message that Mike McDonald gave the team was essentially the team that makes the fewest mistakes is going to win in this one. Do you think that is always the case when you have two defensive-driven teams?
I mean, not always, but it definitely plays a huge factor. I mean, it's why so many teams focus so much on turnovers. Like, you look at the turnover differential, that decides a ton of games. So I think, in a game like this, it's probably one of the biggest factors, but I wouldn't say always. I mean, sometimes you might just have such a talent disparity that you can get away with some mistakes. But, yeah, I think in this game, being the cleaner team is going to be a big difference. And so, for the Seahawks offense, that means eliminating a lot of what we saw in the first half.
Do you think there is more of an advantage to being a defensive-minded head coach than an offensive-minded head coach, or vice versa? I know that the league has shifted a little bit, and I feel like every couple of years this is a conversation you and I have.
I mean, to me, that's the offense versus defensive-minded is almost overrated, and I think maybe that's where sometimes teams get in trouble making hires, because they're looking more at scheme than the coach, the person, the leader. And to me, that's the harder part to capture. And it's very early. We can't crown anybody yet. But I think what gets overlooked about Mike McDonald because of his, defensive brilliance is a big part of why he got this job was, the way he leads, the way he teaches and things like that. And that's something we used to talk about with Pete Carroll a lot, is like, it's not that he was a great defensive mind, but it's that he was able to lead and motivate in a way very few human beings can. And that I think is why we see so many failures in coaching hires, is you're just like, this guy runs a cool offense. They score a lot of points. He's a head coach.
Or you're trying to think 4 steps down the road, which you kind of have to do. But remember, before the hiring, and people are trying to figure out, I mean, if you hire an offensive coordinator or defense, like who leaves first? And then what does that do for the rest of the team? And you're like, how about if you just focus on the task at hand, which is this year, and making sure that things are on track?
Yeah, like what you outlined is that everyone fears of losing Shanahan. That's what that scenario is the Falcons had Dan Quinn as head coach, and Kyle Shanahan was this hot coordinator. And that one worked out obviously very well for the 49ers, but a lot of these hot young coordinators, they're not ready to be head coaches. And that's where, again, I think teams get into trouble. And so the Seahawks didn't look at, okay, we need an offensive guy. They went out and said, who's going to be the best leader for this team?
Yeah. I think it's going to be a fascinating matchup. Of course, I don't think the players necessarily see it the same way we do, because when we're looking at this, it is a defensive matchup and it is strength against strength, because small sample size.
Yeah.
Both teams want to run the ball, and they're going to play really good defense. Although for the Patriots, with Gerard Mayo on staff, they finished top 5 in that defense in like the last, 5 years that he's been on staff. Last year, the Patriots allowed just 3.3 rushing yards per carry. That is the fewest in the NFL. They picked up where they left off this last week with just 70 yards rushing by the Bengals. And some of that could be scheme. Some of it could be players, or maybe it's a combo.
I think it's the players that they have. Very, very well coached, obviously, but they play tough. They have good players. They play hard. All the fundamentals just go right down the list. Check, check, check. Play square, get off blocks. What it takes to play really good run defense. Numbers back it up. Tape backs it up. So we got a great challenge ahead of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can kind of hear the admiration for Mike McDonald, and like when teams play this style, like I think he's really enjoys that of like, they're going to make it hard on us. They're going to be tough and physical and all those things that he wants to be as well. So yeah, I think we say all this and it's going to be 42-39 or something, because football's just dumb like that. But yeah, no, I mean, stylistically, I think there's a lot of similarity in the way these coaches want to do it.
I think that also, if you just feed Ken Walker, good things happen. What I really liked last week in the run game is that they stuck with it in the second half.
Yeah.
It's exactly what Mike McDonald said going in at halftime. We got to run the ball more, and they did.
Yeah.
And how many times have we heard that? And for various reasons, it just doesn't play out that way. But for a first-time play caller in Grubb at the NFL level, right, to do that and to stick with it, and I think some of that is just is Ken Walker just doing what he does.
Yeah.
It changed the game.
Oh, for sure. And I think it helped that offensive line get going too, because like we saw early on when there were some issues with the pass protection, and it's hard for an offensive line sometimes to sort of find its rhythm if they can't run the ball and get downhill. So I think it helped all those guys get going. It obviously just helped the offense as a whole function. And look, a lot of keeping running the when you say let's keep running the ball, you got to get some first downs doing it, and they did, because if you commit to the run and you're getting 2 yards of carry and you're punting, that doesn't work. So it's that they came up with some cool run schemes. Ken Walker did his thing, and it was fun to watch.
It might be difficult to do that again this week.
It'll be hard, yeah. I mean, this is a much better run defense statistically, and just based on their past and the talent they have, it's going to be tough. What's
your level of concern on the offensive line?
I don't think as high as the casual fan who just panics and sees. I mean, I'm not trying to sugarcoat, that first half was bad. I mean, 2 safeties that are both largely on the offensive line. You had, you go first 3 drives were sack, false start on offensive lineman, hold on offensive lineman, and that's basically your first 3 drives were killed right off the bat. So it wasn't good early, but a couple of reasons I'm confident is A, it got better as the game went along. B, you're playing with a center, which is one of the most important positions on offense in terms of what he has to do, who joined the team in mid-August and then didn't start practicing really until late August. So it's like, I'm not saying Connor Williams isn't ready to play and he's not an awesome player. It's that everyone around him, they got to figure all that out together. So I think that element of it, the communication side of it, those guys kind of playing as a unit, that's all going to get better too. So look, there's a lot to clean up. They know that, but I'm more confident, I think, than a lot of people who just watched that first half and wanted to throw things at their TV.
Well, that is also your job, John. See, I told you, we are not overreacting today. You are the voice of reason. We are going to talk about a few of the players to watch on the Patriots side of things right after a quick word from our presenting sponsor.
Statistically, the world is losing color. Just consider all-white kitchens, beige baby nurseries, a sea of gray cars. But in the hundreds of destinations Delta flies to, you can rediscover color in the bright blue waters of Hawaii, the emerald green hills of Scotland, the berry pink cherry blossoms of Tokyo, and so much more. Sometimes opening your world is all it takes to open your mind, which is why when you fly Delta, your potential takes off when you do. Delta, official airline of the Seattle Seahawks.
So when it comes to the Patriots, there's a few guys and a few names to watch out for. I have avoided saying DeMondre Stevenson's name for a little bit because his numbers were really impressive last week against Cincinnati. That is the running back for the Patriots. John, it was 120 yards, but there's a little bit more to that story. He forced 10 missed tackles. Ken Walker forced 8 missed tackles. The only player who forced more was Stevenson. As a result of those 10 missed tackles, would you like to know how many yards he gained after contact?
I'm going to guess it was a lot.
He gained 118 of his 120 yards after contact.
Well, hey, if you want to put a silver lining out from the Seahawks, that means there's some ability to get to him early. You just got to bring him down.
Well,
that means 2 yards before contact, Jen.
You got to be on that. You know who I was talking to about this? We'll hear from Mike McDonald in just a second. But Trey Brown was his teammate at Oklahoma. Yeah. And I said, so what was it like? Like, did you always know? He goes, oh, yeah. Man, like, he is really quick off the first step. He's got great balance. And here's the thing. He is such a large person. You think that every time he runs at you, he's just going to run you over. But he doesn't. And that's what's scary. He just kind of jukes you and goes around. And he was like, no, it's crazy. He is always going to fall forward for a couple of extra yards. So I think Trey might be giving his teammates a few tips on that.
Yeah, no, that's going to be the big test. It's like we didn't see the run. The run defense held up fine last week, but we didn't see them get tested to nearly this level, both in terms of commitment to it and the running back talent. So this is going to be a great early test to see how we saw this scheme look awesome against the pass. We saw turnovers, interceptions, but now we got to see them kind of get tough against the run.
Well, and to do that, here is what Mike McDonald is expecting.
It's about space and angles, so you have to understand, the angle that you need to take, especially with the runners that New England has. And it's about getting multiple hats to the party because, they're big physical backs that fall forward. And there's a huge difference between making contact, a yard or two past the line of scrimmage and falling forward for 4 versus making contact there. And now there's multiple guys at the party. And New England does a good job of kind of getting a hat for the hat. So there's a lot of one-on-one matchups that are going to be happening that we're going to have to win in order to have success.
I like the term "at the party."
I do. I do like that because I always think at the party, like at the quarterback, like you're meeting at the quarterback for a party. I would say a couple of names to keep in mind. First of all, Leonard Williams, right, who was really active but kind of got overshadowed by everything else happening on the back end of the defense. He still had 4 quarterback hits, I believe it was. Also, we don't talk very much about Jonathan Hankins.
Yeah.
That man has quite possibly the biggest legs I have ever seen.
And that's with Byron Murphy on the team.
I know. I felt really good about the leg day that I had in the gym this week. And then I happened to turn and I watched, and Hankins has legs that are like tree trunks. And I said, out of curiosity, how much do you squat? And he looked at me and he goes, well, I can't squat with a bar over my neck anymore. You want to know why? Because he leg presses about 650 pounds.
So he'll bend the bar if he squats.
He would bend the bar and hurt himself. Yeah. Large man, middle of the line. I look for him. Byron Murphy, yes, but you have like 2 trees in the middle.
Yeah, no, I mean, it wasn't a big splashy signing when they got Hankins, but these are the kind of games you go out and get him for. And there's a reason, they said early on after that signing that Adden Durde, the former defensive line coach in Dallas, his coach was like, we need this kind of guy here, and they brought him in. There's going to be games that Jonathan Hankins doesn't play a ton. If you're a team spreading it out and throwing the ball around, but games like this, he's going to have a huge role.
Well, and he is now a 12-year vet. He told me last week his goal was always to play 10 years. And I said, really? Most guys pick like a smaller window of time, like 3 to 4. He goes, 10 felt really good. Yeah. It felt like something not very many people do. And after I hit 10, I still felt good. Yeah. So people kept calling me. I'm like, okay. And he is leg pressing 650 pounds. Here's another name that I think we need to keep an eye on, Kyle Duggar. He is a former teammate of Derek Young at Lenoir-Rhyne. And when Derek and I were talking this week, I'm like, did you always know? He goes, yeah, because I would practice against him, and he's doing things that nobody in D2 should do. And so the conversation was had, like, why don't you transfer? You could go and do this at a big D1 school. And apparently Duggar said, I think I can accomplish my goals right here at Lenoir-Rhyne. So you've got two of the most, I guess, famous athletes to come out of that program are in the NFL. They're going to be on the field together today. Kyle Duggar had a forced fumble last week, a couple of huge red zone plays. And I think he's one of those key pieces back there for the Patriots.
Yeah, they got a few on defense. Again, that's a talented defense. And Keon White's coming along, 2.5 sacks in the opener, good young player. So there's not a bunch of big, like, all-pro household names, but this is, they did a good job rebuilding that defense, and they're going to be tough.
Yeah, and Keon White, those 2.5 sacks, he had one all of last year. One.
Yeah.
So that was a massive jump in performance and very active just across that entire front. How about a player who stood out last week on this defense, which is tough to do? I mean, you had Julian Love. You had the linebackers who played like they had been playing together for years, but it actually was their first game on the field together. Reek Woolen and that interception.
Yeah.
And really just following through on what we saw in training camp, because that was one of my big kind of question marks. And one of the things I wanted to see, turns out that training camp, it wasn't just about showing us what he could do. It was getting back to what he knew he could do.
A lot better just because I actually got to work on my whole body. I wasn't rehabbing before a season. Usually guys train before the season. They're not rehabbing. Guys building their bodies. Well, I had to rehab my knee and strengthen my legs. And, I feel like I didn't focus on, my whole body rather than this all season. Before camp, I got to, train and, have a healthy body, work on my legs, my upper body and stuff like that. So I feel like that's probably the biggest difference.
It's always nice when we all think we see something in training camp of like, oh, this player's really coming through and they look like they're having a good season, and then just immediately goes out and validates it. Like he had, of all the players we watched in camp who was like, who's going to make a leap, probably like him and Charles Cross, who also played awesome this week, by the way. Two of the guys are just like, okay, that guy looks like he's playing another level right now. And to see Reek immediately go out and do that. And it's so funny because, like, players, coaches, everyone, like, just raves about that play because it's just, he makes it look pretty routine. He's watching, okay, he ran and picked the ball. But, like, when you're given that inside leverage to a receiver, like, that's not a play cornerbacks are supposed to make. Pete Carroll used to talk about this, too, with Reek as a rookie. He's like, he's doing things that just they don't do. And it's funny because, we hear Mike McDonald like, oh, we've never, that's a play you just never see. And then we asked Reek about it, and I pulled up the quote because I didn't want to get it wrong. He says, I'm just fast. I chased it down, the ball's in the air, and I caught it. That was it. Like, it's, oh, okay.
But wait, did it start with shoot?
Probably. I might not have transcribed the shoot, but yeah, he just said he ran an over out, and I'm just fast. Like, it's so simple when you run a 4.240. Like
right.
Yeah.
I know. I wish I knew what life was like.
Yeah.
I wish I knew what that life was like. You know what? That is going to play into what I want to see in this week's game. But before we get to that, how about if we hear from our fantasy insider, Scott Engel?
Thanks, Jen and John. Quick-hitting fantasy football tips for Week 2. More on Seahawks.com on the Fantasy Insider tab. At quarterback, rookie Jaden Daniels is already looking like a must-start. A bounce-back week for the Jets. Good to stream Aaron Rodgers against the Titans. At running back, Jordan Mason of the 49ers is an RB1 in fantasy football for this week. Top 10 start, lock him in. And also Jerome Ford of the Browns, as Cleveland has the 4th best run blocking grade on Pro Football Focus for Week 2. At wide receiver, be patient. It's early in the season. Keep Marvin Harrison Jr. and Drake London active. At tight end, Colby Parkinson, the former Seahawk, gets a bigger role starting this week for the Los Angeles Rams. And on defense, go with the Seahawks. Good matchup against the New England Patriots for sacks and turnovers. Julian Love, Draymond Jones, making a difference for your fantasy football team in a Week 2 victory. Check out more of my work, Seahawks.com, Fantasy Insider, comprehensive guide, and my lineup rankings on rotoballer.com. Back to you, Jen and John.
Thank you, Scott. Okay. We talked about Reek Woolen. We've talked about what this defense can do. Last week, I let you go first on what you wanted to see, and you stole mine. So I am going first this week. And I want to see over 120 yards on the ground by the team, by the Seahawks. Yeah. So we can divide that up however that needs to get divvied up among running backs and playmakers. Dual threat quarterbacks, yes. Because I want Jacoby Brissett to have to throw the ball. Last week, the Patriots quarterback completed 15 of 24 for 121 yards. He didn't have to throw the ball very much because Stevenson was running, but I want to force them into those situations so that Reek and Spoon, I mean, 3 takeaways by the Seahawks defense could have been a lot more last week.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Dotson had an interception he could have had. Their Spoon could have had a couple. There was Julian Love forced to fumble that they got a lucky bounce on, went right back to him, but they still got turnover on that drive. So, yeah, there's opportunity there for sure.
So I need to see over 120 rushing yards to begin with, and this might be taking yours. I need to see clean football.
I'll give you that. I'm kind of piggybacking off what we just talked about, but I want to see 2 takeaways because we did not see a turnover from the Patriots last week because Mike McDonald talked about this with Brissett. He's not he's kind of what you might call a journeyman quarterback. He's not necessarily going to wow guys with what he does, but he's a really smart football player, and he's doing what they want right now, which is being smart, taking care of the football. So this ties into what you said of stop the run, make them throw it. But if they can do that, just get a couple takeaways. Other side of it, I just want to see the offense function cleaner. Early on, I should say. I think they did a really good job in the second half, but just don't get yourself the self-inflicted, first down, just get a few yards. Right. You go back and watch that game, their first 10 possessions, the Seahawks, 4 of them, they got any positive yards. We're talking 2-yard run. They scored on all 4. The other 10, or the other 6 of those 10, went backwards on the first play, either a tackle for loss, a sack, or a penalty. So just don't start off in that hole, and I think this offense can do some good things.
Yeah, and control the time of possession is going to help against, defensive-minded team in the Patriots. We will see how those things play out on Sunday, the first road trip, the first 10 a.m. start for the Seahawks this season, and they've been pretty good, by the way. Your final note, the Seahawks have been 24. They have won 24 of their last 35 games on that early time slot. So let's look for that success to continue. And let's look forward to seeing you back here next week for another edition of the Seahawks Insiders Podcast.